and welcome to this 9th video in my Managing Stress Q&A series. I am re-recording this video because I just recorded it once and my camera stopped recording after 10 minutes, which was kind of demoralizing, but here we go again. So if you would like to submit a question to this series, you can go to aliceboys.com and sign up to my email list, and then just reply with your question to any of the emails that you get. I am answering usually between 1 and 3 questions each video, so it does take me a little while to get through them, but doing my best. Alright, so let's take a couple for today. This is from Hallie, and she says, how do I stop crying once I start? When I get triggered, I can't stop the tears, and it's like turning on a tap. It usually centers around feeling hurt or being treated unfairly. Any strategies you offer would be greatly appreciated. Okay, yeah, so fear of crying, fear of blushing, and fear of sweating all tend to be related to social anxiety. And the approach is kind of similar in each of those scenarios, where the focus isn't on like stopping the person doing the thing, but it's stopping them feeling shame about doing the thing. So stopping them feeling ashamed of blushing, or ashamed of crying, or ashamed of sweating. The sweating one is usually guys, who are worried about excessive sweating in situations. I would say to think if it is that kind of fear, like a social anxiety fear, there are some strategies that are traditionally used as part of the treatments for those kinds of things. So one is to make a hierarchy of situations that you fear would bring on crying, and start with things that are low level fears, and right up to the most scary thing that you could imagine that you worry would bring on like major crying. So start from things that are like a 2 or a 3 out of 10, and right up to like a 9 or a 10 out of 10, and make a list of those things, and then try and practice stuff at the lower level first. So practice like a few things that are 2 or 3, and you might even practice the same thing like multiple times, or slight variations on the same thing multiple times, and then work your way up, right? And it doesn't matter whether you end up crying or not. The idea is just that you're not avoiding situations that would that you fear would bring on crying. So an example of something that might go into that scenario would be like, I don't know, the last few days I've been thinking about this tragic accident that happened when I was a teenager in this small town where I grew up, where a bunch of other teenagers were on a field trip from their school, and a bridge collapsed and a bunch of people died. And it was just one of those moments like the day Princess Diana died, or like one of these moments that you just remember, like, it's such a seared on memory from my childhood. And a topic that is really emotional like that, I might sort of tend to avoid discussing with anyone, like even with my spouse or something. But the memories of that was like strange. I haven't thought about it in years, but they were strangely really bothering me the last few days. And that would be a situation that I think like I don't really want to talk about it because I think I'm going to cry, right? I don't have fear, like any kind of intense fear of crying, but I have enough of a not embarrassment over not crying in front of people that I would tend to avoid talking about something like that. So if you would put something like that somewhere on your list, and it might be that you fear crying when asking for something, or getting feedback, or so you have to be kind of creative and set yourself up situations that you can repeat a few times at each level, and then kind of move up. The other thing that is part of those is a different kind of exposure as part of the treatments for those kinds of problems, is what we call interoceptive exposure. And that's where you expose someone to sensations that bring on a similar feeling to the physical sensation that they're scared of. Like, so for people with panic attacks, it would be things like spinning on a chair for like 30 seconds, or putting their head down between their legs to try and bring on a sort of slightly lightheaded feeling. So you do this in safe ways. Or if someone's worried about feeling sort of like claustrophobically hot, you might get them to like put on super warm clothes in a in an already warm environment for a few minutes. So you always do that, obviously really safely, and it's only for a tiny amount of time. It's only for often like 15 seconds, a minute, or whatever. So you might set yourself up some situations that would feel a little bit like when you would worry about crying, like that eye stingy feeling. It could be like obviously chopping onions kind of thing. It could be putting some eye drops in your eye, like just basic lubricating eye drops. It could be, for example, like just putting some water on your eyes and rubbing your eyes and then going into a meeting or something like that. Like just bringing on some of those sensations on purpose, and that can help desensitize you a little bit too, so that you don't go from 0 to 100, right? That you don't start to get these sensations of starting to cry or crying and just automatically start to panic about the crying. The other thing I would do is think about the situations that surround the fear of crying. So maybe it's happened when you've gotten feedback from a supervisor or something like that. Maybe you've got a spouse who knows that the crying thing is something that is a button that they can push, and so that if you guys have a really bad argument or something like that, they will say something especially cruel about the crying just to kind of really work you up. Maybe when you're growing up, maybe you had the crying thing then, and maybe your parents didn't know how to handle it. So I would think about so think back to some past situations and think, if there was someone around me that was really skilled, what would they have done in those situations? What would have been really helpful to me? How would a parent of a kid who was a crier have handled that if they were really skilled? How would a supervisor handle it if they were really skilled? And also like something that you can say back in a situation where somebody is making fun of you for the crying. Like, what is the way that you would handle it that feels most empowering to you? You might start going into some situations and letting people know in a really proactive way that that's something. It's my 4-year-old. That's something that you do. So letting a supervisor, like if you're going to a new job or you've just changed teams or something, like letting people know in a really matter of fact, non-ashamed way, this is something I do. I do it when I am nervous about presenting an idea, or I do it when I get feedback. It doesn't mean anything. Like it's just it's just a reflex reaction, and it doesn't mean like I need extra support, or it doesn't mean that I'm super anxious or whatever. It's just this reflex that I have, if that's true for you. And just let other people know how to handle it. So if you're really non-ashamed in how you talk about it, you can let other people know how to handle it in a way that's going to be useful to you, and so that other people don't feel anxious about what to do in that situation. And if you are really upfront and matter of fact about it, you can cut out any of those erroneous perceptions that people might have, where thinking that it's a sign of like emotionality or weakness or whatever. Just being really upfront, saying this is this sort of reflex that I have. The other thing that you say is that it's usually centered around feeling hurt or being treated unfairly. So I would think about if it's sort of more private situations rather than with other people that the crying bothers you, then think about some different ways to handle those thoughts, so it doesn't all the thoughts that come with those feelings, so that it doesn't bother you as much. So you want to make it so that the crying is irrelevant, right? So again, the idea is not to stop the crying so much as the idea is to stop the crying causing extra shame or anxiety for you. So what is probably happening is that you feel kind of overwhelmed by your feelings. You start the crying, and the fact that you're crying and maybe you're sort of starting to cry a little bit out of control gives you more of a sense that the feelings are overwhelming you. So if you can have more strategies for dealing with the thoughts and feelings in a way that it doesn't feel like they're overwhelming you, is then you're gonna kind of break that cycle. So, for example, in a situation that you feel hurt, like how can you handle that? Like reflect on some situations where that has happened. So, an example for me is like a few weeks ago I had something really important to me that was that I thought I had agreed with someone we were doing in January, and I had wanted to do it in like November or December, and the fact that I had to wait to January was already kind of distressing. And then I tried to confirm with the person, okay, like we're all set for January, and this is a few weeks ago, and they said, oh, I think it's going to have to be February. And I was like, I felt really hurt. I felt like they hadn't paid any attention or remembered that I was really upset about having to wait till January, and February was just like terrible. And it's to think, well, okay, well, how do I want to handle it when I feel hurt like that? And if you can reflect back on some situations with a little bit of distance, you might be able to think a bit more strategically than when you're right in the situation. And there's not always going to be a perfect answer to that kind of thing, but you think, okay, well, if I experience a hurt like that, how do I want to recover on the actual day that it's happening? How do I want to recover on the next few days? Like, how do I want to cope both like practically? How do I want to cope emotionally? So, do I want to move to a plan B? Do I need somebody that can to work with somebody that can work with me earlier than February or whatever it is? Or do I try and convince the person that I really need to do it in January and tell them that they've let me down? Like, what am I going to do in a practical sense, problem solving sense, and what am I going to do in an emotional sense about the fact I feel hurt? And then apply the same situation to situations in which you've been treated, in which you think you've been treated unfairly. So, revisit those situations with a bit of distance and come up with some plans for some really specific ideas. Right, they don't have to be things you would definitely do, but things that you could do, like in the day that kind of thing happens, and then the subsequent days. And again, like separating, have some strategies for practical coping and some strategies for emotional coping. Alright. And if you have less of a sense of being overwhelmed by those kinds of feelings, then you're probably going to care less about whether the crying happens or not, because again, you can just see it as kind of like a reflex that happens, and not like a sign of being overwhelmed by your emotions. Okay, so I'm going to leave that here for now, because as I said, I'm really hoping this is still recording. I had recorded a bit longer of the video earlier, but I will leave that at one question for today, because so I had recorded like answers to 2 questions. I got up, I saw my thing hadn't recorded, and I was like, do I like give in and not do this for today and go to what I had planned to do after this, or do I re-record? And I was like, okay, well, I'll re-record, but like, let's just do one of the questions. Let's not re-record the whole thing. So I just want to give you that as an example of like how I personally cope with things that are disappointing or frustrating or that kind of thing, like some sort of middle ground between giving up and saying, okay, well, I'm not doing it for the day, I'm not re-recording it, I don't have because initially I was like, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, I just don't have the emotional energy to re-record that. And then even though it's fun for me to record them, it's not fun for me to have to do it twice. And I had like something I was going to do like once I had finished, and also like I'm trying to keep my like 4-year-old like occupied while I'm doing this. So when something like that happens, like don't like trust your first reactions too much. Like I gave it like just a couple of minutes. I only took about 2 minutes where I was like, and I just kind of went and got a drink, and I was like, okay, like I can suit up for this. But then I was like, okay, well, I don't need to do both questions. I'll just do one question and get something out. So that's an example for you of like the thinking process and the strategies that you can use for a situation that is disappointing or frustrating. And again, like just little niggles, like not like, like all first world problems kind of things, not like big things, but even like how you respond in those kinds of situations does kind of build your resilience, and builds your ability to persist with things and that kind of thing. So it is kind of useful to zone in on your reactions in those kinds of situations and use them as an opportunity to manage emotions and build resilience and manage thoughts and that kind of thing. Like, I had to manage the thought, oh, I can't. I was like, okay, well, I managed the thought by just like giving it a couple of minutes and seeing what happens to the thought. And then the thought had actually left, like within literally 2 minutes. So that's some ideas for you on that. But thank you for watching, and I will be back with some more answers as soon as I can. Yeah, have a good day.